Great. Welcome to REI's Investor Talk Show. I'm Neil Peterson, and today we're unpacking South Africa's community schemes. Think sectional title schemes, homeowners associations, share blocks, retirement villages where most urban homeowners now live and invest. And these schemes rise or fall on governance, money, and rules. Get those wrong and value bleeds very fast. Get them right and your protection returns. So my guest is Zerlinda van der Merwe. She's from TVDM Consultants, a leading specialist in community schemes. And Zerlinda holds an LLM focused on the constitutionality of sectional title rules. And she's worked across the legal, managing agent, and advisory trenches. In short, she knows what breaks schemes and how to fix them. Zerlinda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thanks for having me.
That's a great pleasure. So, Zerlinda, just from your vantage point, what are the three biggest pressures on sectional title schemes right now, and where we're actually seeing outright distress?
Okay, perfect. So we're actually at the moment in a bit of a good spot in the community scheme space. A couple of the things that I've thought of that I see daily in our practice is the real need from both a legal and a practical perspective to have amendments undertaken to the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, as well as the Community Schemes Ombud Service Act. I say that because the CSOS seems to be very focused on amending and updating and adding to their practice directives. These are directives that are allowed in terms of the Community Scheme Ombud Service Act, but it is only intended to interpret the legislation, not to add to or attempt to amend the legislation. And what we've seen with the latest consolidated practice directives of the Community Scheme Ombud Service that came out about a month or two ago was that there was a lot of actual amendments to the legislation, both the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act and the Community Scheme Ombud Service Act in terms of these practice directives. They were very widely published by our colleagues in the industry, and the Community Scheme Ombud Service has been going on a bit of a roadshow across the country to explain these. But I think that because of the vast size of the document, it was about 130, 140 pages of a lot of legal jargon, many individual community scheme members didn't actually pay attention to it, but were rather waiting for webinars and summaries and blog posts of it. So I think it kind of slipped below the radar, and I don't think that people are really understanding the severity of such a document that has really reached into where the legislature should actually be dealing with the legislation. Another issue that has always been a bit of a problem, and I think even more so because of just our hectic lifestyles and reliance on technology. I mean, AI, everyone's ChatGPTing at the moment. And the danger of that is that there is a lot of owner apathy, as there's always been, but even more. I would have thought that with, Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams and all of those fun things, platforms for voting, that meeting attendance and participation would have actually increased. But I've actually seen quite a decrease in participation and activity from owners. And along with that comes non-payment of levy contributions and just non-compliance as well. So that seems to be a bit on the rise. And I think it's because people are spending less and less time on things that are not directly impacting them. Life is just moving very, very fast. And I think people do have legitimate reasons for non-payment, but if they became more involved and interested in their schemes and investments, that would definitely improve things, in my opinion. The overall distress, I think that a lot of these things could be dealt with by the Community Scheme Ombud Service if they were properly fulfilling their mandate. And as all South Africans, we always like to turn a negative into a positive and almost link it to some, joke or positivity. But I think it is time that we actually get serious about what the CSOS is doing, not doing, and should be doing. At least I try to be vocal, but it is difficult when the majority of the stakeholders, who are the owners and the trustees and the investors, are not really paying attention to what's happening right underneath their noses.
Okay, so are the bodies corporate really meeting the 10-year maintenance plans and reserve fund obligations in practice? And, what sort of hard red flags in audited statements, minutes should buyers and lenders treat as walkaway signals?
Yeah. So again, this is, the whole owner apathy thing about non-compliance issues. So in my experience attending annual general meetings, special general meetings, trustee meetings rather, the majority of bodies corporates, they know about the requirement of a maintenance, repair and replacement plan. The majority of them are actually having a document put together, mostly through specialized companies, which is great, but they're doing it, from what I see, just to tick the box, just to say, yes, we have a maintenance, repair and replacement plan. Yes, we have a reserve fund. Yes, we have a separate bank account. But actual applications sticking to the maintenance, repair and replacement plan and having the required amount of money in the reserve fund, that's something completely different. And I'm not seeing as much of that in the community schemes that I'm working with and from questions that are being asked. What I'm seeing in practice is that bodies, corporates, and members, or at least trustees, are advising members that they simply need to meet the minimum requirements. So just to have that 15% in the reserve fund, just to have the maintenance, repair, and replacement plan, for 10 years, and let's just, chuck it in there to call the annual general meeting. But that's not the intention. We're not supposed to meet just the minimum requirements. We're also not supposed to take all of our savings and throw it into the reserve fund, and then suddenly need the money, next week type of thing. So most body corporates are complying, but it really is just a formality, a tick. From the issue about the documents and things that people should be, or the red flags that people should be looking at, are things like, has the body corporate entered into a loan? Is the body corporate raising special levies? How often are they raising special levies? How are they recovering it? What are they using it for? Where are the levies based on the budget? Has there been a lot of levy increases? Is there a lot of over expenditure in terms of the body corporate? Just how is the funds being managed is most certainly something that buyers should be looking at.
Okay, so can you give us maybe a quick win which can stabilize cash flow in 90 days?
Sure, stabilize cash flow in 90 days. Making sure that you involve the owners, making sure that you are compliant, making sure that you've got your statutory requirements met, your administrative fund, your reserve fund, increasing your levies up to the maximum limitation of 10% between the end of the financial year and the budget approval, going to owners with realistic figures, involving owners in that budget preparation, maybe even having an informal budget meeting, are all things that I think trustees can look at quite quickly, and not trying to budget for the minimum expenses, but having a bit of a healthy reserve and savings.
Okay, great. So based on your LLM research into the constitutionality of rules, which common rules get struck down and how should trustees draft rights compliant enforceable rules?
So the rules that are struck down by the CSOS are those that are deemed to be undesirable rules in terms of the practice directives. Those were clarified under the Consolidated Practice Directive. So it's things like not allowing ritual slaughtering within the scheme. They don't allow the towing away of motor vehicles. They regulate the amount of fines that are raised. They don't like trustees to exercise their sole discretion or be arbiters in disputes. They don't like rules that favor a developer in a community scheme. So those are the types of rules that they are shutting down. And then to ensure that your scheme has a set of rules that are appropriate for your scheme is to not ask for a template. So it's okay to work on a template, but you can't just have the prescribed conduct rules. You can't go to another scheme or your managing agent and say, just give me a set of rules that work somewhere else, because each scheme is unique and it's the composition of the members and the residents that make it unique. One scheme could really be battling with issues like barking dogs and parking. Another scheme needs to regulate short-term letting. Another scheme has an issue, financial management. You need to look at it. My recommendation to trustees is always to consider the rules as a working document and noting that it has to reflect the reality of the scheme. If you're going to start from scratch, you must take the prescribed conduct rules, look at the practice directives of the CSOS, look at what your actual scheme needs, and then take guidance from your managing agent, involve the owners, take it to a specialist if necessary for review and suggestions, and just note that it is a working project. It's not something that you're going to do quickly. It does take some time, and it definitely does take member involvement.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about short-term letting and use restrictions, as you highlighted. Where's the legal line between a reasonable conduct rule and overreach on Airbnb short-term rentals? Let's talk pets, noise, renovations, and how do municipal bylaws intersect with the scheme rules?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're definitely the expert when it comes to this, and where the local municipality is looking at short-term letting. We definitely do need more guidance from that perspective. I mean, at the moment, we're just looking at timelines of short-term letting, what is considered to be short-term letting or not. I think there's also a very big misconception amongst trustees and owners. Every single day, I see a set of rules that says no Airbnb type usage is allowed. Airbnb is a platform. It's not a form of letting or a form of use. A lot of bodies corporates believe that short-term letting is a change of use. It's running a business. As soon as we get those concepts out of our mind and look at short-term letting like normal letting, rules are going to become more reasonable. We see often with conduct rules that the body corporate tries to restrict short-term letting and ban short-term letting. They put in unreasonable time periods. They say that the tenants aren't allowed to access certain parts of the common property. They're not allowed to, have visitors. They're not allowed to have pets and all those fun things. They're not allowed to park on common property. So a body corporate needs to treat any occupier the same. The owners, tenants, long-term tenants, short-term tenants, all those fun things. And the Act actually says that rules have to apply equally. So it really cannot say you're allowed this in one instance and not that allowed in another instance. CSOS doesn't really have a hard and a fast rule when it comes to short-term letting. They do really let the schemes rely on it. From a municipal bylaw perspective, the Act, the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, provides that the body corporate needs to ensure compliance with the municipal bylaws, which means the rules also have to be in compliance. So we really are in that sort of like, purgatory type of situation that we're waiting for the municipality or the local government to actually give us, or rather national government to actually give us regulations.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about CSOS in the real world, this community scheme ombud service. I mean, when should owners, trustees use CSOS versus the courts? And what timelines and outcomes should they realistically expect for levy arrears, nuisance, and governance disputes?
Yeah. So whether or not something should go to court or should go to CSOS is really dependent on which attorney you speak to, because obviously if you're a litigation attorney, you're going to say court. The court is the forum to go to in the event of urgency, in the event of a matter falling outside of one of the prayers of relief that the Community Scheme Ombud Service Act sets out in Section 39 of the legislation. And in my opinion, and speaking to my colleagues that specialize in levy collection should also continue within the courts. The urgency is a really big thing, and what is urgent to me and what is genuinely urgent is also two different things. But things like access control, pets, nuisance, parking violations, building contraventions, those are all urgent matters, but the Community Scheme Ombud Service doesn't necessarily see it as an urgent matter. They're legitimate urgent matters that they have as grounds in terms of their practice directives should be dealt with within about 72 hours. I've not seen a matter dealt with that quickly. With regards to the normal matters, those should be taking around about 90 days or so, but it's been a bit of a mixed bag. In some instances, I'm seeing matters dealt with within 3 to 4 months. In other instances, in over a year. Previously, a couple of years ago, we were looking at applications for dispute resolution taking 3 to 4 years. We're in a good space at the moment, touch wood and all that fun stuff. They seem to be moving along quite quickly. But I wouldn't hold my breath when it comes to their timing. From a rule and governance perspective, they should be taking between 1 to 2 months to dealing with rule compliance as well. But generally, they do try to stick to timelines, but it's not urgent.
Okay, so which are the best prepared CSOS application? I mean, what paperwork wins? And maybe also the opposite, what are the common pitfalls at cases that actually get kicked back?
Yeah. The process of making an application for dispute resolution is pretty straightforward. There's a prescribed form, it tells you what you need to do and all those fun things. the biggest or best advice I can give any person that is wanting to make an application for dispute resolution is to firstly see whether or not what they want to achieve is something that the CSOS can deal with, because the CSOS only rejects matters way down the line. Like the adjudicator at the end phase says, this is a matter that doesn't fall within our jurisdiction. It wastes months and months and months, whereas you should be very clear under Section 39, I want a prayer of relief for A, B, and C. And if what you want doesn't fall squarely within one of those categories, then you can't go to the Community Scheme Ombud Service. You need to take advice on that. And also ensure that I do everything to ensure that I've exhausted my internal remedies. So have I spoken to the owner that I've got a problem with? Have I spoken to the trustees? Have I tried to attend a meeting? Have I gone to my fellow members? Have I tried to get support to go to a meeting? Those are the types of things. You can't go to the CSOS and say, I've got a problem with my neighbor. And then somebody asks you, have you even spoken to your neighbor? Like, oh no, like I want to avoid conflict. Like, don't go to CSOS then if that's going to be the case. And also make sure that you're making the application against the correct person. So a lot of people say, oh, it's the managing agent that I've got a problem with. But the managing agent isn't the decision maker. The trustees are the decision maker. Or they don't include the owner that they've got a problem with. They take it up with the trustees. So those are a couple of examples of things to look at. You also need your application to read like a story. So whenever you say, oh, I've got a problem with the budget, attach the budget. I attended the last annual general meeting and I had an issue with this particular thing that was said. Attach the minutes. Create a bit of a story, and don't simply give the CSOS, a whole whack of documents and sort of like expect them to go through it. You need to minimize it, keep it nice and chronological, and also take the emotion out of it. It needs to be well thought of, and understand that the person that is going to read it on the other side doesn't know you from a bar of soap. They want to look at facts. And then have it professionally prepared if it's something that you can't attend to on your own, and then understand the process of the CSOS, because that can make the difference between having an order dismissed or having an order made in your favor. Is understanding where in the process you are and what the steps need to be. That's my tips. The pitfalls. The pitfalls is obviously not adhering to that.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a bit about funding upgrades, levies with loans. I mean, for solar and backup power, water security, also major refurbishments. I mean, what funding models work best? I mean, legally and practically, and how do you structure them to avoid an owner revolt?
Yeah. So special levies is one way that a body corporate can fund any form of project. Of course, if your body corporate has a history of bad payment, raising a special levy isn't really going to help the situation at all. Ensuring that projects are budgeted for and monies are saved towards that is also something to look at. What I'm finding in the industry more and more is that body corporates are taking out loans. So to go with a reputable company, to understand what they're getting themselves into in the time period, and of course, getting the required special resolution of the members is important. It's again not something that happens overnight. It's quite a lot of homework that has to go into it. We're seeing a lot of like power purchase agreements and things like that for solar installations. I'm also finding that less and less bodies corporates are installing solar, but rather allowing individual owners to go the route of installation. And if that is the case, the approval that is required is the most important thing to be compliant with. But from a funding perspective, I think first prize is for the body corporate to be able to fund it themselves. And if it is something that is urgent, which most of these projects tend to be, then of course the route of getting proper external funding is the route to go. And the guys that are out there in the industry and that are putting themselves forward are reputable. They are experts in the industry. They know how to work with schemes. But of course, everybody must go into it with their eyes wide open.
Absolutely. So what does a professional managing agent mandate and service level agreement look like in this year, 2025? Maybe give us 5 trustee mistakes and maybe 2 quick wins that lift compliance and cash flow fast, which is a big problem you've identified.
Yeah. So there is definitely, and has been for the last couple of years, a move towards professionalizing the property management space. We've got with the STSMA, the introduction of executive managing agents. That is, a very big thing and is becoming more and more. Administration is also being looked at more favorably than it used to be in the past as well. We've got the panel of the executive managing agents on the CSOS side as well. If you're going to make an application to them for appointment, which I don't recommend, I believe that it is something that the members must come to a decision with. So professionalizing the industry most certainly is there. Paying the managing agent for what you expect from them is definitely something that needs to improve. And a lot of bodies, corporates are trying to get the cheapest deal, but are expecting, miracles from the managing agent, and that's really not fair. The body corporates needs to be involved with the management of the scheme. The members of the body corporate need to attend meetings. They need to really work with the managing agent in order to make it work. A couple of mistakes that I often see with trustees in the practical sense are they generally become trustees because of a self-interest motivation. So like they want their own application to be approved, so they become a trustee, or they become a trustee because they don't want somebody else to become a trustee. A lot of trustees become trustees because they don't have enough time on their, well, they don't become a trustee because they don't have enough time. They become a trustee, but they don't have enough time. Whereas, of course, you do get a couple of people that become trustees because they've got too much time on their hands. And then, there's just there's not enough trustees that are really taking their hands-on approach to making themselves more knowledgeable about community scheme management. They go to meetings where they're not preparing. They're just looking at one particular trustee that seems to know what they're doing, and they, agree with them. And they're not taking accountability. They a lot of trustees point fingers at the managing agent when things go wrong. They drop the managing agent under the bus where it's a decision that they should actually be making. So accountability is definitely something that I believe is not taken on board, which is a mistake. Something that could make an impact would be to get a good managing agent, maybe look at getting an executive managing agent, because there are executive managing agents that do work with you still as a committee and as a body of members to educate themselves. There's so much free education out there, not ChatGPT, but actually quality prepared, courses and things like that, and to involve the owners, be transparent, rather give the owners too much information as opposed to keeping information away from them. Whenever I go to a special general meeting that is being called by owners, or a really acrimonious meeting, one thing always comes through, and that is the lack of transparency. So be transparent with your members, involve them earlier rather than later.
Excellent. So let's, in closing, let's look at some buyer due diligence. If you only had 10 minutes to assess a scheme, what do you check first? Maybe give investors, landlords a due diligence checklist, the documents to demand, top 5 deal killer red flags, and maybe the green flags that say a scheme is investable and resilient.
Cool. So as an investor owner, as a tenant, you need to get this information from the estate agents, from the rental agents, from the sellers, because as an outsider, you don't really have a right to this information in a body corporate. But the things that I would look at quickly is having a look at what I'm buying, so that you'd see on the sectional plan, having a look at what I am able to do and not able to do. So that would be in terms of the rules. Have a look at where the body corporate is financially. So look at the last approved budget, the set of financial statements, and of course, look at the minutes of the last annual general meeting to see if there's any, issues or upset members and those types of things. And the red flags when you look at these documents will be, there hasn't been an AGM for a couple of years, or the AGM is late. The audited financial statements are qualified, or they're not signed by the trustees. There isn't a proper administrative fund and a reserve fund, or there has been over expenditure or under expenditure. There isn't a properly prepared maintenance, repair and replacement plan. You walk the scheme and you start seeing problems. You start seeing lack of maintenance, waterproofing problems, all those sort of things. You also need to compare the levies to what is actually there. Is the scheme self-administered? Do they have an elevated Do they have a swimming pool? Where's the money going in the scheme? You can't compare body corporate to body corporate. You have to look at the actual body corporates. Make sure that the proper insurance is in place. Is there a managing agent? Is it self-administered? Is there compliance? Are they registered with CSOS? You can look at that pretty quickly. I often get told by people like, oh, I can't get a copy of the budget or the audited financial statements because I'm not going to understand it anyway. Trust me, as an attorney, I'm the last person that you go to for financial advice, but there are things that will jump out at you, even if you've got zero financial acumen, that will very quickly tell you whether or not it's a good scheme to invest in or not. And you have to look at the two documents in conjunction, where the body corporate has come from an audited financial perspective consideration, and of course, what are they planning and how are they spending the money? What are they requiring from US members in terms of the budgets?
Okay, excellent. So Zerlinda, just in finality, can you share with us just one myth about community schemes that you would like to kill forever?
The us and them theory has been something that has really been a bugbear of mine for years and years and years. So we often get owner clients that will come to us and say like, oh, the body corporate doesn't want me to do this and this, or the body corporate isn't allowing me to do this and this. As an owner of a unit, you are the body corporate. There is no us and them. The trustees are themselves, in most instances, also owners that are volunteers, so that us and them theory really needs to come to an end. And the same applies in any other community scheme. Retirement scheme, homeowners association, you have it. The trustees, the directors, they're appointed by you at meetings. They're not suddenly, paid for experts that are at your beck and call 24 hours a day. There is no us and them. It's all we in a body corporate or a homeowners association.
Excellent. So important truths shared with us today. Money must match maintenance, compliance, transparency, rules must pass constitutional muster, and governance beats guesswork, and good communication, and a whole lot more. Get those right, and value follows. Zerlinda, thanks very much for the straight talk.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. And for our audience, we'd love to share maybe a free community schemes DD checklist, your checklist, and maybe some CSOS resources in the description. I think that'll be a nice little add-on. So subscribe to ROI TV, share with your trustees, and let's raise the standard across South Africa. Zerlinda, thank you very much. Great chatting to you, and we chat to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Neil.